Hey miniature painters, I'm Will the Paint Beast, and in this video I'm going to show you how I add some magical energy to my minis. Hey there fellow paint beasts, today I want to get you thinking about details that will draw the eye. Just something simple that won't take a lot of time but will elevate a paint scheme. So I'm going to show you how I went about adding a little bit of magical energy to the weapon on my Croxagore miniature. Adding a detail like this does several things. It introduces some variation in the form of a spot colour, it makes the miniature more interesting and therefore catches the attention of the viewer, and it lays the foundations to teach us about special lighting effects. My aim is to show you that with a little bit of effort you can add some bright, vibrant details to your miniatures. So let's head over to the painter desk and see what I'm talking about.
So this is what we're going to aim for in this video. It's like a weapon that is magically infused, so there's like a core of magical energy sitting within inside this sort of sphere of stone. I'm painting this miniature up as a giveaway on my Patreon, and I wanted to sort of add a little bit of something extra rather than just sort of doing the sort of basic paint scheme. So I'm going to show you how I go about doing this. Now there will be many different ways of doing this. This is just the way that I do it. I think it lends it a nice sort of spot colour on the miniature, and when I say spot colour I mean you look at the miniature from this angle and it's all blues and a bit of yellow, then you turn like that and there's a bit of colour that sort of draws attention to the mini. So if you've been following the sort of tutorials up till now, you'll notice that I focused a lot on the face to add a bit more contrast and vibrancy there. That draws the viewer in when they're looking from this angle, and then when they're going to be looking sort of on this side, they'll notice the weapon first and maybe pick it up and have a closer look. So what are we going to use to achieve this? Well, it's going to be a few paints, fewer than usual. We're going to use one that's not sort of a standard paint. You'll have to go out and find this somewhere. We're using some Liquitex Acrylic ink, titanium white. This gives you a nice bright white. I really like this ink. I think it's good. You will need to thin it down a little bit though. I've used Lahmian Medium in this one, but you can use other mediums or other thinners. Sometimes I use some airbrush flow improver, but I thought possibly Lahmian Medium was going to be one that resonates with people more if they're maybe new to the hobby and they only know about the Citadel colour. But just know that there's lots of different options out there. Then I'll be using contrast Doomfire Magenta. This is a newly acquired paint and I really liked the vibrancy of the colour. Then I'm going to use some Flugrim Pink because the Doomfire Magenta is going to act as sort of like the base colour that gets its vibrancy from both the pigment in the colour and also the acrylic ink. And then the Flugrim Pink is going to add like a little bit of a glow. And then we're just going to top that off with some white scar, but any white will do. This isn't a particularly good white. Again, I just thought it would resonate with maybe beginners because they know what Citadel colour is. But you can use anything you have as long as it's a bright white. We've got our wet palette, as always. This I use to not necessarily keep the paints wet between painting sessions, but it's just very handy to have to keep paint, so sort of like a longevity of paint while you're painting. If you try and use it straight out of the pot, you can't get it thin enough and you can't manipulate it for as long. So that's why a wet palette is useful. We've got this sort of plastic paint palette. I'll be using that for the acrylic and the contrast. The ink and the contrast. Don't worry about it. It looks dirty, and it is, but you tend not to pick up dried paint, and some of this paint has been dried on here for quite a long time. And I'll give it a clean periodically, but it's nothing to worry about. As usual, I've got my 2 pots of water, one to clean, one to rinse. That's important. That helps you keep your brushes alive longer. I've got my paper towel, again, really important to A, help keep your brushes alive for longer, and B, control the paint that's on your brush. Very important, that. And I've gone for 2 sizes of Raphael Kolinsky Sable 8404 series. Size 0 is sort of the standard paintbrush I use for most things. It's got a nice point, quite a fine tip. And in this episode, because these lines are fairly fine, I'll also probably be using the 5-0. That's like a very small tip, and it just gives us a little bit more of a precision control. But you can just stick to this size 0 if that's all you have, or if you have something similar. You don't have to go for this brand as long as you've got a brush with a good point and good bristles. I think Artisopus do a brush that I'd be keen on maybe trying one day. So that's that. Probably worth mentioning as well is this isn't the only way of achieving this effect. There'll be plenty of different ways that other people do it. I'm just showing you how I like to do it. And this, just to clarify, this isn't OSL. This is just like a magical energy resonating from the weapon. OSL would be the light is shining from this weapon onto other parts of the miniature. And you don't always have to do that if you're lighting specific areas. Sometimes it's nice just to get a tiny little glow in places. So where are we going to start? We're going to start with the acrylic ink and the Lahmian Medium. We're going to give both of those a good shake. And take our plastic palette. We're going to drop one, because you don't need a lot of this. You're going to drop one drop of ink into the palette. That's quite a big drop. Put that back in there, close it up. And then shake this up. Oh, sorry, I forgot one piece of equipment. We're going to use a pipette. You can get these on Amazon really cheaply, just packs of like 20. I'm going to suck some of that up there. We're going to add the same amount in to this ink. Now the ink dropper does fairly large drops, so we're going to do 2 of these just to thin it down ever so slightly and make it more workable. Because sometimes the ink will, if it's too strong, it will just stain everything, and we don't want that. Just going to swish our brushes in the paint, just take all of the moisture off. You don't want to introduce any water into this ink, I've found, because it just makes it too thin and unmanageable. There we go. So what we're going to do, we're going to take a little bit of that just on the end of our brush. Like that. You see, I've only gone halfway up. I don't want to put any more than that on the brush. Then we're just going to drag it across the paper a couple of times. That means that we now have control. There's not going to be ink pigment running everywhere. We're going to grab our mini and we're going to get to work. So we're going to zoom in to show you hopefully exactly what's going on. I'm going to try and keep that in focus. So the aim here is to just very carefully just find the lines and then paint the white ink in them. Now you can sort of dab it in there a little bit, and that makes sure that the ink comes off the brush, but because we haven't got too much on the brush, it stays controllable. And it doesn't matter if it goes on the edges, because that kind of provides a little bit of that sort of OSL effect that I was talking about, like it's sort of glowing out from the core. It's going to take maybe a little while, but I think if I start taking too long, I'll just cut the video and then come back to this, but I'll keep as much in as I can. Basically, we just need to do this all the way around these sections. It takes patience and it takes time, but the effect is worth it. And it's fairly simple procedure. Fairly simple process. Now, don't be tempted, as I do in some of my videos, to, if you miss your mark, don't be tempted to wipe this away. Sometimes I do wipe paint away with my fingers if it's wet, and if I'm quick enough. I'm not going to do this with this ink because the ink will smudge and stain everything, and we don't want that. So again, each time we need to go back to the paint, we're going to take the paint. Sorry, there you go. Take the paint about halfway up on our brush, and you can see it's full of water there. It's full of pigment, and it's full of everything. So we're going to just drag that off on the paint, and you can see here how that's much less reflective and there's much less water in it. That's what's going to help us control what's going on to the miniature. Let me try and get this in focus again. There we go. So we're going to try and do this moon shape here. I think I'll do the moon shape and then I'll finish the rest off camera and let it dry. Actually, I don't think there's enough on my brush there. But if we... yeah, there's not enough, so I'll put a little bit more on. Again, dab it on the paper towel. And go again, because I'm kind of looking for that sort of bright, almost glow. There you go, that's better. I see I missed there. I'm not gonna bother brushing that away because I think it will lend sort of a nice glow. And any cracks or anything as well. It's like this weapon's been used multiple times, so it'd be quite cool to add sort of the glow coming through, like this crack here. We're going to make that slightly less because it's sort of wear and tear rather than the design of the weapon. As you can see, you can go quite far just on one brush full. There we go. Cool, so I'm going to finish the rest of that off screen and cut back when it's dry, because you'll need to leave this to dry for a little while. I've cut back a little bit earlier than I thought I would. Now, I just want to show you that you don't necessarily have to stick to the grooves or the sculpted parts of this. I actually want there to be a glow around these spikes here. So what I'm going to do, as you can see that I've already done sort of half of it, I'm just going to draw a line just right in the sort of grooves where these sort of little pyramid shapes touch the weapon. These are going to be quite thick, but that's okay because it's like the energy is sort of leaking out just like that. And it's, you know, you can introduce this wherever you like. Another thing I thought I'd show you as well is, now that I've gone around this whole thing, where I've started, it looks like I haven't actually applied enough. I haven't applied enough ink, so I'm just going to go back and apply another layer there. And that's, you know, you might need to go over this once or twice just to get the effect that you want. But that's totally okay, because, you know, this is a hobby, so we want to, you know, not necessarily spend loads of time doing it, but at least, you know, have a good time and spend quality time doing this. And, you know, I take pride and take satisfaction and sort of relaxation in getting it right and the way that I want it to look. So I'm going to go back and I'm just going to add a bit more lighting in the areas that I think are not bright enough. And it doesn't matter, again, if you touch the sort of edges of the weapon itself rather than just the recesses, because, you know, it's like it's glowing outwards from the center of the weapon. There you go, there's that. Maybe I want to just brighten this line here a bit more. I'm going to put that aside just to dry. Okay, that's dried now, and you can see that it's actually looking pretty glowy. It's quite bright. That's a really good thing, because the next step is going to be adding some of the Doomfire Magenta. And what we've done here is just going to really, even though Doomfire Magenta is very saturated and it's a really nice colour, so vibrant, this is just going to kick the vibrancy up a notch as well. So we're going to take a drop of our Lahmian Medium, just one, just to lubricate this paint a little bit. We're going to pop that in there, one. And then we're going to get just another pipette, because we don't want to mix these colours up too often. You don't want you don't want these bright colours in your mediums. Right, I'm going to put 2 drops in there, just because we only want that Lahmian Medium to see how bright that is. We only want that Lahmian Medium to loosen the paint a little bit. We don't want it to thin it too much. Just going to mix that up a little bit. Take that off our brush, dry the brush, rinse it, dry it again. And then, again, as before, we're going to take some of the paint on our brush, only sort of halfway up, 2/3 of the way up. We don't want any getting in the ferrule. Just wipe some of it off on the paper towel, that gives us more control. And then we're going to just, we can be a little bit more, we don't have to be so careful with this. We can be a little bit more maybe liberal with where it goes, just because it'll give us a bit more of a sort of glowy effect. But we don't want to paint it directly onto the sections of the weapon that are still that nice sort of jade dark colour. As you can see, this is coming out really vibrant already. We're just going to go all the way around. Oops. Now with this contrast I can wipe away with my thumb if I need to, if I'm quick enough. We're going to wash our brush each time we go back. Just put a little bit more on the brush. Again, control it. Go back to the miniature. And as you can see, just if I get it focused, just here, I don't think there's enough. Don't think there's enough of the Doomfire Magenta here yet. I'm not going to go back over that yet because the contrast paint will still be wet. And if I go back over it, it will probably pull it away from the miniature. So I'm just going to start painting another section. And again, don't worry if you go over the edges too much because it'll add like a sort of like a glow effect, which will make it look a little bit more magical. And that's what we're going for, right? We're going for like this magical energy. Okay, this bit here may have dried by now, so I'm going to try going back over it, and if it pulls it up again, we'll just leave it to dry a bit more. No, that's fine. That's good. Right. And as you notice, I'm going back to wash my brush each time my hand has sort of left the miniature, and that's just what keeps this brush in good working order. You don't want to buy a brush every too often really, because they cost a lot of money, especially these good ones. So we're just going to carry on doing that. This won't take as long as the last step did. Whoops. I didn't catch that part in time. You see it's now staying that, but I'll just go back over that with the highlight colour later on. There wasn't enough paint on my brush then, which is why I went back for more without washing it. I'm just going to concentrate on getting this just nice and neatly into the things, covering up any trace of the ink. And even though we're covering up the ink, the base colour that it's provided, that nice bright white, is really making this colour punch its way through, which is like really cool for this sort of magic, glowy sort of element. I've been getting quite a few nice comments recently on YouTube, so if you have anything nice to say about my painting, or maybe even anything negative, then I'd encourage you to put a comment in on this video. I'd like to hear from you. I've struck up some amazing conversations so far with people, so I always like to hear from you, hear how it's going, hear how you've either applied the lessons in my video or videos, or how you might make them better, or how you do your own things. So you might do this that I'm showing you in a completely different way. that's cool too, because I think if we, you know, the more we can share the knowledge that we have, the more tools we have in our painting arsenal. Again, you'll probably be able to do this quicker than me because I'm trying to focus doing it while I'm explaining it, but you know, it doesn't take any of the fun out of it. It's still achieving the look that we want, or that I want. It's just chipping away at this time and time again, just to get the right look. This is one of the more sort of complicated parts of this miniature. But again, as I've said in other videos, you know, the work that you put in, you'll get out. So I highly recommend putting the work in, because it's my favourite part, right? Is the painting. It's what I use as a sort of relaxation therapy. And you should too. Can you see there's a drop of water just dangling off the tip of my brush there? That's because I haven't wiped it correctly on the paper towel, so it's just got stuck on the ferrule. It's very important to get rid of that, because if that then sort of drops down onto the brush while you're painting, it will just completely flood the area that you're painting. Right, so that's all the way around that. There are a couple of little bits of white actually, but shining through at the top on these sort of like spikes. Let's see if we can get rid of those. Yeah, cool. There's a little bit there. You know, if you miss some, you don't have to go all the way back around it, because you know, if there's a little bit of white shining through, that might look like an extra bright part of the glow. Again, I want to leave this maybe just 5 minutes just to dry. So I'm not going to bore you with that 5 minutes. So I'm going to pop it down, and we'll cut back when it's dry. Okay, it's been about 10 minutes, so this is probably dry now. What we're going to do is we're just going to add a little bit more, even though that looks really vibrant, we want to add some sort of brighter energy in it, so it starts to look a bit more like an energy glow like this. So we're going to take some of the Flugrim Pink, thin it down quite a lot, and then just introduce it into the recesses where we put this colour. I mean, you could stop here if you want, because it does look pretty cool, but we want to make it so that it's clearly definable to anyone looking at it. And at the moment, because it's so vibrant, you can't actually really see the shapes, whereas here you can. So that's what we're going to do. We're now going to introduce the shapes that have been sculpted into the mini back into the miniature. The way that I do that, so I take a brighter colour of the same sort of tone that we've got. We're going to add some water onto the palette, just there. Just dry the brush a bit, and then a dollop of paint. I'm just going to mix that in. That might even be a bit too thick, so we're going to add a bit more water to it. And what we want is kind of a, let's see if this is the right consistency. Yeah, so we want something that's really quite watery, almost like a wash, but not quite. So just a bit thicker than a wash. And what we're going to do is we can take quite a lot of that on our brush, just dab it gently on the paper towel just to get excess water out. And we're going to pick one of these lines. Let's see if this will stay focused. Yeah, cool. And then we're going to flood that area with the pink, and we're just going to sort of dab that on like that. You can see it sort of retained the nice warmth from the Doomfire Magenta, but we're making it a bit brighter as if it's like a glow. We're going to do that on every part, and if you feel like the brush is starting to run out of paint, just wash it, dry it, and put more of the pink on there. Dab it on the paper towel, and then continue. We really want to, because this is almost like a wash, it will really form nicely into the lines, but just sink down to the absolute bottom and keep that Doomfire Magenta really showing through. It's likely because there's a lot of water in this that when it has dried properly, we might just need to do another coat, but we'll get to that stage when we come to it. Again, this is all about like building layers of paint, one that affects the other. All of these layers will affect each other, and if you remove one of them, you'd be surprised at, you know, at the result, because it won't look anything the same. It won't look like anything like what I'm showing you now. That's kind of what painting is to me. It's like this big puzzle that you're trying to solve, and you're putting all of the, you know, each piece fits together. And a lot of people will say, oh well, you don't need to do that step, or you don't need to do this step. It's absolutely right, I don't need to. I'm doing it because I enjoy that sort of creative problem solving type challenge of, you know, how do I get this to work? And I'm enjoying the process rather than maybe the outcome. And that's what it's all about for me, is enjoying this process. Okay. Unusually, and I think I said in one of my last videos, that you don't want to move your brush hand around too much. You don't want to be sort of like over here or over here, and you'd be moving the miniature around a lot more. Now, in this case, I'm trying to keep everything as stable as possible because it's such intricate work, and that's why it takes so long. But again, the rewards are there. She's doing it right. I need some more pink on the palette, so we're going to do exactly the same again. Shake up the paint. This time we're going to add maybe about half as much as we did before, because we're almost there. Put that in the same area. Load the brush up with water. That looks a little bit too thin for me now, so I'm just going to add a tiny bit more back in. There we go. And the more you do this, the more you'll understand, you know, when paint looks too thin or when it looks too thick. And we'll need to leave this to dry again once we've added the added all of this pink horror. Sorry, Flugrim Pink, not pink horror. If you wanted this to be slightly darker, then you probably could use pink horror actually to you know, give it sort of a bit more of a dull glow. But we're going for something that looks, you know, pretty magical, pretty bright. Pretty as if, you know, non-understandable technology in a fantasy setting. Not sure that these energy bits on these spikes are working too well, but that doesn't matter. You see here, I'm sort of doing all of these diagonal shapes that run downwards first, so I don't have to move my hands so much, and then I'll move the miniature around so that I can get to the other side. So I only have to do that movement in repetition rather than sort of going 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. Sort of doing all the ones first and then all the twos. Okay, so that's pretty much it. I've just missed a bit there. Oops. Cool, so that's looking a lot more sort of bright and looking a lot more like there's something glowing from within. But there's one extra step we want to do. We want to add some white in there just to make it look just a little bit more, I don't know, sort of powerful energy like. And you could stop here again. Actually, this is looking pretty cool. But we're going to add the white. I mean, maybe I'd stop there after like the comparison between that and this. Maybe my second attempt is better. But as we can see across the miniature, it's all actually quite pastel. So we'll go with a bit more of a pastel vibe with the white. So we can take white scar. Again, feel free to use another colour. I'm only using this white scar because I have it. I'd probably use a different white from a different brand, I'd expect, just because this one tends to get loads of little lumps in it. Again, paint on the palette, add some water. We're going to want this one fairly thin, almost like a wash, pretty much more like a wash than the last one. I'll show you what that looks like. There you go. It's almost like that ink, but the reason we're not going to use the ink again is because the ink is very strong. This isn't as strong, so you'll see the comparison between. Actually, if I do this, I'll show you. So this is the comparison between the paint once you put it on your brush and once you've dabbed it on the paper towel. So you can see there's loads of water in here again. It all sort of flowed in the direction of the brush. I didn't have much control over that. I put it on the paper towel now. As you can see, I've got much more control over where that goes, and it's much thinner. And the line is much thinner. So let's do that. And we're going to pick some sections to add a bit more of a glow into this. Here, right. Let's go for the moon shape first, shall we? Again, we're just gonna really quickly, actually this time, because we want this to sink right to the bottom of the recesses and leave a lot of the pink that we did in the last step in there. You'll see that this kind of stops at the intersection of each line, and that's quite cool because that kind of gives us bright points. Oops. I'm not going to take too much time over this step because we only want to enhance it ever so slightly. Whoops. There you go. I find this is a nice little thing to do, to practice a little bit and just enhance your miniatures ever so slightly. Not impressed with the, there you go, that should stay in focus now. Just going to dab that in there, trying to get some bright sparks of light. See, that's already much more like the other side already, which is great. Let's add a bit more of that white down here because there's a spot of quite vibrant Doomfire Magenta. And almost done now, so we're just going to do the same thing on the top of the weapon. I'm going to be a bit more careful with these pyramid type things, sorry, these spikes, because we want just to put that in the very recesses. Too much in there, you see, so I'm just going to take all the water off, all the paint off my brush, just dab it around the area just to get that away, and push it around, pigment pushing. Again, go back. Just flood these little areas in a controlled way, just very quickly, not really worrying too much about where the paint pools because any bright spots will look like a shining light. I don't want to move my hand around so much, which is why I'm sort of doing the ones and twos at the same time. There we go. Just one line here. Yeah, maybe this one actually. Okay, cool. Now, you may have noticed that this is a bit of a mess around about here. So I'm going to show you how I would go about fixing that. I'm going to take something close to the base colour of this, which is going to be Sotek Green, which looks a little bit too bright for me, so I'm going to add some black in that as well. These aren't part of the colour scheme colours, just in terms of what we're looking at today, so they're not going to be relevant to maybe your paint scheme, but if you have been painting along, you can use these colours. Just going to mix a bit of those two together just to bring it down to the tone of the jade, and a bit of water in, because that is the same colour as sort of these bits that aren't being affected by the glow. I'm just going to run just a line there because it's just a little bit messy and it's confusing the eye a little bit, so we're going to just tidy that area up. Maybe the same here. We can go along and do that in some other places as well if we think that there's too much purple on the other edge. Just very gently, quite thin paint, almost like a layer of paint. You can see that's kind of nicely tidied that area up a bit. Maybe a bit here as well. Because these are raised areas, I don't have to worry too much. I'm just sort of like holding my brush at sort of this angle and then just drawing it across, and it's not going into the recesses. That's another way you could do this, right? If you wanted to make it look a lot cleaner, you could just do that. Let's wipe away all of the sort of excess paint, excess purple paint, but we're going to leave it like that for today. There you go. So I hope you enjoyed that. That's how I go about adding some sort of magical energy to weapons, and you can do that with any series of colours. Like that would look quite nice in like a green or a yellow or a blue. Anything that can like be that vibrant sort of glow colour. Right. Hope you enjoyed that. Thank you for watching.
Thanks for watching. I hope you learned something about why we inject some of our miniatures with details like this. Remember, practice makes perfect, so get into the habit of adding details like this to the miniatures that you paint. If you found this video helpful, don't forget to like, comment and subscribe, making sure to change that bell notification icon to all so you get to hear about my future videos when they're released. And for those of you who are looking for more exclusive content, why not sign up to my Patreon? And just like this lot, you can become a member of the Paint Herd, which is a growing community that we have over on Discord. So big shout out to all my patrons to say thank you for all of your support. It is very, very much appreciated. And here's a special shout out to everybody who's on the Beastigore tier. Andrew Maystone, Andy Smith, Gerard Barber, Gerardo Lopez Gill, Jason Ozawagosh, Jeremy Williams, MC Van Wyck, Neil Buxton, Nicholas Paredes Carvajal, Rob Hassel, and Stephen. Anyway, that's it for now. So until next time, unleash the paint beast within and get painting that plastic.